Chapter 1, the first splash. It started with a wall, not a beautiful one, not even a blank one. It was weather-stained and forgotten, its surface flaking with old paint and sunburned graffiti. A brick canvas no one looked at twice, sandwiched between a corner store and a shuttered laundromat. But to them, to the handful of friends standing before it with chipped brushes and half-formed dreams, it looked like possibility. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement, and the smell of fresh primer mingled with the scent of city dust and distant fried food. They weren't sure if this was going to work. They weren't even sure what this was. But they had paint, they had each other, and they had time. "I can't believe we're really doing this," Ava said, stepping back with a grin and a streak of blue across her cheek. She was the one who first floated the idea. Not in a formal meeting, but over coffee, scrawled on a napkin in a moment of caffeine-fueled inspiration. What if we made art that brought the neighborhood together? It had sounded wild then, a sweet daydream. Now it was reality. Or at least the beginning of one. Jamil knelt at the base of the wall, mixing a tray of paint with the concentration of a sculptor. "It's just a wall now," he said. "But soon, it'll be a mirror." "A mirror?" asked Carlos, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah," Jamil replied, not looking up. "A mirror of who we are, of this block, this city, this moment." Carlos laughed. "Damn, that's poetic for a guy who almost used house paint by mistake." The others chuckled, their nervous energy lifting like steam. The tension of doing something public, something uncertain, began to ease. They weren't professionals, not all of them anyway. Ava had studied art. Jamil taught music at the community center. Carlos worked construction. Nina ran a corner bakery. Maya was still figuring things out. But what united them was a shared ache. The feeling that their neighborhood had stories to tell and no one to tell them. Ava dipped her brush into a bold golden yellow and made the first stroke. A wide arc that sliced across the gray brick like sunrise through fog. "Okay," she whispered, more to herself than the others. "Now it's real." One by one they joined in, layering color over color, shape over shape. There was no grand design yet, just fragments of ideas, a sunburst, a rising dove, abstract patterns. But with each stroke, their mural began to breathe. People passed by and stared. Some paused. A few smiled. One man shouted, "Y'all getting paid for this?" They laughed and shook their heads. No, they weren't. Not with money anyway. They painted into the evening until the sky turned indigo and their arms ached from reaching, from dreaming out loud with their hands. As the last rays of daylight kissed the edges of the mural, they stepped back to take it in. "It's messy," Maya said. "It's beautiful," Nina replied. "It's ours," Jamil added. A silence settled over them, heavy but warm. The kind of silence that follows something sacred. In that moment, the wall was no longer a wall. It was a promise. The first splash in what would soon become a flood of color, connection, and community. And none of them could have imagined just how far it would go. Ava wiped her hands on her apron, now streaked with every color they'd touched that day. She glanced around at the others, noting their quiet smiles, their eyes lingering on the wall like parents watching a child take its first steps. "This wall, it's gonna talk," she said suddenly. Maya tilted her head. "Talk?" "Yeah, you know, to people who walk by, to the kid riding past on a scooter, to the mom waiting at the bus stop. It'll say, 'Hey, you belong here too.'" Carlos leaned on the handle of a broom he'd been using to sweep debris from the sidewalk. "It'll need to shout then. People don't always stop to listen." "They will," Jamil said softly, looking up at the gold arc Ava had painted. "They will when they realize it's their voice up there too." A small voice called from behind them, "Can I paint?" The group turned to find a girl, no older than 8, standing just behind the caution tape they'd tied across the edge of the sidewalk. Her hair was tied in messy braids, and she clutched a worn sketch pad to her chest. Ava crouched to her level. "What's your name?" "Jada." "Jada, I think we've got the perfect spot for you." She stood and looked toward a lower section of the wall, still blank. "This part's waiting for something special." Jada's eyes lit up. She stepped forward, unsure but excited. Carlos handed her a small brush and a tray of pastel colors. "What should I paint?" she asked. "Whatever makes you feel happy," Nina said gently. Jada bit her lip in concentration, then began to draw. Small stars and a smiling moon, floating above stick figures holding hands. It was simple, but something in it struck the group, an innocence they'd almost forgotten. As the sun dipped below the rooftops and the sky shifted from purple to navy, a few more neighbors stopped by, curious, hesitant, open. Couple walking their dog, a teenager on a skateboard, an older man who lived across the street and rarely spoke to anyone. They lingered. They asked questions. Some even offered to come back tomorrow and help. That's when Maya realized something. They hadn't just started a mural. They'd started a conversation. Later that night, after the brushes were rinsed and the supplies packed away, the group sat on the curb, legs stretched out, backs against the warm brick. "You know," Carlos said, cracking open a bottle of iced tea, "I didn't expect to feel this connected." "To a wall?" Maya teased. "To all of it," he replied. "The idea, to this street, to you guys." They fell into a soft silence, interrupted only by the distant buzz of streetlights and the occasional car. The mural glowed faintly in the dark, its colors still wet and full of promise. "I think this is bigger than we know," Jamil said, his voice thoughtful. Eva nodded. "Yeah, and it's only the beginning." From where they sat, they could already see it. More murals, more people joining in, more stories being told in brushstrokes and chalk and music and light. A festival, maybe. Gathering. A reason to look forward, to celebrate not just art, but each other. The wall had opened a door, and they were ready to walk through it.